Hey, honey,
Yes, Barry?
let's get out of here.
Where are we going?
Where do we always go?
Fascina el viento, este ritmo de palmas, sin ti naturaleza, hasta encontrar la playa. Por eso grito al mundo, yo soy de Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.
Christina, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us where you're from. You met your mom. Tell us where you're from and what was your path that led you here to Mascota.
Well, I'm originally born and raised in Berkeley, California. Raised in Oakland. I've been all around the Bay, but around the beginning of the pandemic, 2020, I moved out here to Mascota, Jalisco, which is like my nest of family, ancestry. All of my people are actually from here and around the zone. I have actually I've followed my ancestors all the way past Jalisco, all the way to Nayarit, and then we go to Europe. So that's the interesting part.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
both sides of my parents are from this town. And interestingly enough, my mom born in the States, raised in Mascota, and my dad born in Mascota, raised in the States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, how did they meet? Was it arranged?
Well,
What was going
no,
on?
my dad's 10 years older than my mom. So my dad at 13 moved to Oakland and grew up. He actually went to Oakland Tech, grew up out there, and then started doing construction, did construction over 50 years. But my mom moved out there when she was around 22, around that age. And then my grandpa's the in between there. My dad knew my grandpa. So my mom started dating, and then 5 years later.
So it's Grandpa.
Yeah.
Grandpa did it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very
Yeah.
cool. All right. So you came here during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
You had been here before, I imagine, right?
So
Many times.
since I was little, I think around 7 or 8, my grandma still lived in Mascota. So my mom and my dad would send me out here in the summers. So I'd be here for a month around. And then that's how it was for a long time until I went probably to college. I graduated high school in Pleasanton, Amador Valley.
Shout out to Amador Valley.
I graduated high school there, and then I moved out here to Guadalajara to do college. I was going to be an architect. I did a year of school. Kind of a bit of a culture shock for me.
I bet it was.
So I ran back to the States. I was out there for another 2-3 years, and then that was a pandemic. And then so I decided to move out here. My parents were going to open the hotel, so it was kind of like perfect timing for me. And then that's what I do now. So
Wow, got out of crazy town just in time, and here you are in Mascota.
Yep. All right.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Mascota.
Yeah.
Because you've been coming here since you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been changes in Mascota?
Oh yeah, big time. I think I remember like being little. It was kind of like a ghost town. There wasn't a lot of people everywhere. There wasn't that many cars. I don't remember that many cars. I remember like walking. Everything wasn't as colorful as it was because Mascota's more lively now because we became a Pueblo Magico, which is around 8 or 9 years ago, I believe, if I'm not wrong. And that gave a town a lot of like into getting into tourism, taking advantage of the tourism that we can get. But before that, it was a lot more colonial, very quaint, still people riding around on horses. Sometimes you still see it.
Yeah, we saw some yesterday. We saw some kids on horses
which
yesterday.
is really cool. It's beautiful sights to see. But Mascota, it's like the central town for all the little towns around, which are still stuck in time, which is great to go visit because it sends you back 50, 60 years, and all those populations are still pretty much dedicated to living off the land, everything like that, which is really, really something beautiful to see. But here in Mascota, there's a lot to do in town in terms of seeing, like we have the Preciosa Sangre, which is those ruins that are amazing, beautiful.
Beautiful, unbelievable, just Instagram moments
everywhere.
step.
And it has this energy inside too, which
Yeah,
is really
it does.
interesting. Then we also have like the main church, which is a beautiful place as well. And that place I think has been the same since I was little. I think the same colors on the outside and inside as well. My grandma used to send me at 2:00 from 2 to 4. There's still la siesta, right? So she would send us to church. We'd be sitting there, not too happy about it, but
Well, you know.
wanted to play, but you know,
Yeah.
it's part of the culture.
Right.
But yeah, it's a lot of interesting cultural values you gain from being around town and just seeing how people live.
I should say. And, you know, there's still not a whole lot of people walking around the streets. I see that
yeah.
a lot of people driving cars, right? I mean, it is a mobile kind of a community, right? These people have cars. They got places to go. They got things to move, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because if we were to talk about, it's like a very commonly known story in Mascota. I think a lot of small towns have it. The first two cars ended up crashing into each other in town. So like it's pretty funny to see. Yeah, and they said they were like those kind of longer Cadillacs you would drive, and it'd be one block, and then you'd see the end of the car. You know, so it's funny to see those types of stories in town where you're like, "There's a lot of streets. How would that happen?"
How could that possibly happen?
I think it's a common occurrence in a lot of small towns. But yeah, it has a lot to do with just the way you feel being in a small town, like especially coming from a place for me like the Bay Area where it's so much diversity, so much to see, so much going on all the time. Coming here, it's like very mellow. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, it's like rare to see a car drive by, stuff like that, which is interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of the restaurants and shops actually close during the week because there's not a lot to do. And then weekends we get a lot more people moving around, a lot more traffic, a lot more tourism. Right now, we're still trying to get tourism from Vallarta to do the drive from San Sebastian over because it's only 45 minutes.
It's a little bit of a trip, but it's a beautiful trip.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous.
It's beautiful. And then especially right now that there's still little waterfalls, and on both sides, if you go towards Talpan that way, you still get wonderful views because you're going technically a little bit higher into the mountains, but a different way. And then if you go up into the smaller towns that are Yerba Buena, Navidad, Juanacatlan, beautiful, beautiful views that are just, if you think that the drive from Vallarta is beautiful, these are amazing
views. I mean, I would think that you would use Mascota. You would use like this as basically your hub, and then go and hit all those other spots. How would you do that? You hop on a cab? What would you do?
I recommend if you're going to come into town and you do want to see, like we have petroglyphs. It was actually Mascota means land of snakes and deers. Thanks, Mom. Snakes and deers. And it's beautiful because when they were growing up, they said that they would still see them like roaming the streets. You don't really see it as much because they have been sent out more into the wilderness.
They've gone away.
Yeah, we've taken care of making sure they don't appear that much, unfortunately. But the views all around is just, it's serene. Nature tries to find any place. Like for example, here at the hotel, we have a small courtyard garden, and we get a variety of plants and animals that come and visit us all the time. Hummingbirds of all different varieties. They even nest here in the pergola, which is really cool. But going from here to visiting everything around, I always suggest bringing a car. That people drive with anything that's drivable in town. It's just having a little bit of confidence in being, because it is cobblestone roads. Yeah. It is, after you leave Mascota, it's not cobblestone anymore. It's a path. So a regular car will go up all the way to Navidad, Juanacatlan. It's just making sure that you're paying attention to the road. There are holes. There are big rocks. It's just making sure you don't land on one of them.
Right. Well, what about cabs? I mean, can you get a cab in town and have them take you up there?
Yeah, they'll totally do it. It is.
It gets kind of expensive? What happens?
It does. It depends. I can't really exactly tell you how much it would cost to take you to Navidad. Around, I'm guessing 300 pesos, 400 max. That seems like a lot too.
Well, you know what? If you go to Maito, for example, and you're going from Tuito to Maito, it's about an hour ride, and that's about 500 or 600 pesos. So it's, that's reasonable when you think about it. If you don't have to rent a car, so not a bad deal, but you might have to make them stay for you, that could be an issue, right?
Yeah, that's true. But they will, or they'll tell you, call me back. But then you go up there and there is no service. So,
no, right. Yeah.
No service pretty much anywhere other than Mascota.
I was going to say Mascota even is a little bit tricky, right?
Yeah. And that's right now that we have satellite internet, we have regular internet. So we are in rural mountains, so we don't get the luxury of having internet all the time, depending on what is going on too. Because they are doing fiber optic cable, and it's all coming this way from Vallarta.
Okay.
But
that'll take a while.
Yeah, little by little, right? Which is the beauty, I think, of it as well, because it makes you reconnect with the land, with people, asking people around. There's always one place that'll have good internet, so it's always just making sure you ask,
find it.
Do you know who has internet? Who has internet right now?
Spot?
Which is cool, because I don't think there's a lot of places anymore where you forcefully get disconnected, right? Which is part of life, I think. So
right, and it can be actually a pleasant part of life if
you don't have to turn something in or
pulling your hair out. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, and so then from here, I think the best thing you would do is taking 3-4 days. I think in Mascota, to be able to just see everything is the best. 3 days, I think.
To be able to use that for your little, your hub and get out there and see the places.
Because we also have tour providers that do have all of these little places included. There's one called Tierra Madre Tours where they go, because unfortunately the petroglyphs, the excavation from National Geographic, where they found a lot of cool artifacts from our native past people, they're in private property. So technically everybody shows up wanting to see them and they have to ask. But these people already have their direct routes in there. So they'll take you directly. They give you a great explanation of even how to make ocochal, which is they weave their pine needles. So they go recollect the pine needles and they weave them and they make jewelry out of it, which is really beautiful. And they do that whole process while showing you the petroglyphs, while showing the beautiful volcanic area they're around, which is really cool because Mascota is a volcanic zone. So we have around 7 or 8 volcanoes all around town, which are beautiful, still on private property because we are in agriculture land.
Yeah.
So everybody's growing stuff all around Mascota, which is beautiful because it is a great economic impact for town too. But other than that, going from what is the petroglyphs, the small towns around, Mascota has a presa, which is a man-made dam and lake, which is really nice. There's 4 or 5 restaurants around it. You could go eat right at the water's edge. In Mascota, it's a little bit outside of Mascota, 15-minute drive max, and a taxi will take you and they'll pick you up, or they'll tell me what time and we'll be here. They do have service out there, so especially at the restaurants, they can call and then we'll be able to. Not on the way, but once you get there, right? Yeah. That's a good place. And then there's La Alameda, there's a river. Las Alamedas are 3 small parks that are connected to the way the river goes around Mascota, which is really pretty because they have a lot of trees, just a place to hang out, spend the day. We have pool areas. So we have a restaurant that has pools and people go and swim there as well. And then outside of Mascota, you could even use Mascota to go all the way to Talpa and San Sebastian, because San Sebastian is a lot smaller than Mascota. So sometimes they get oversaturated with guests and there's nowhere to stay. So Mascota is a great place because we do have a lot of hotels. We do have a bigger capacity for people. Just we're a little bit more in the mountains. So that's a difference. And then Talpa, which is religious tourism, which is another beautiful place, a lot more touristically inclined now. That's where their whole economy comes from. Mascota is still agriculture town. So that's why we're so quiet and quaint, which is, I think, also very different. You get the best of both worlds out of the 3. You get to go to all these different places. But I think Mascota, you still get to really understand what it is to live rural Mexico, what it is like a life that 3-4 generations are from Mascota, that everybody kind of knows each other, which is really cool. It could be a little interesting as well, right? Small town, how does that saying go? Small town, I'm not going to remember it right now, but it's interesting because when you're from here, everybody knows you, or they at least know your parents. So
so don't mess around, anybody.
Exactly,
right? Don't step out of line.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about, you were talking about, there's places to stay in Mascota, and we're in a place to stay. So let's talk about your hotel.
Encanto de la Sierra.
Yeah.
So Encanto de la Sierra has been a generational project, I would say, beginning from my great-grandmother and my grandfather. So when Mascota was still kind of just a small little town, my grandma and my grandpa, well, my great-grandmother came up with the idea of telling my grandpa to buy the property it's on. And he
Say,
had
hey, kid, buy this property.
Yeah, she's like, there's going to be a need for a hotel one day, right? But that was pretty much all the talk. And he bought it and he used it as a huerta. So he had fruit trees here. He had a few little rickety little rooms that he was a really cool guy. Very, I would say like, eclectic, and he just went with the flow. So he had his little rooms here. He would hang out and he had his fruit trees. And then I think that was his last wish for my mom and my uncle, was for them to build a hotel here. So when in 2002 they began construction, they bought the property around 1960, 68. So that's how long the property's been in the family. And then that was first, 3 generations, and then second generation helped. And then my mom and my uncle were the ones that actually started from bottom up. They started constructing, and that started in 2002. The project took around 20 years for it to be completed, and still not. I think we always are doing something else. And
this is the Templo
Inconcluso. Yeah. Otra preciosa sangre.
Yeah, another lugar, right?
Yeah, right. And I think that's very, very straight on to what it is for us, because it is kind of like our family, like, little seed that we planted here in Mascota, which is cool, because not just from our side of the family, because my mom's side of the family, they came all the way from Los Altos de Jalisco. So they actually have left a little seed on every town, pretty much from over there to here. So starting with, I think they arrived in Atenguillo, and then Mirandilla, and then, which are all the towns, Volcanes.
Haciendas.
So my grandmother was born in the hacienda in Volcanes, and then they started moving up. So pretty much every little town we have family there, which is interesting, and that's where other branches of the family started living. And then we get here to Mascota, and they get into commerce, so they start stores, and that's how they were able to keep their livelihood. And then my uncle still runs the store that our great uncle started. So
really? What's the store? Casa Chavez. And what kind of a store is it?
It's a departmental store. So they started selling everyone. Yeah, they started selling everything from, they used to sell sugar, all the commodities, and then they started going up to clothing, and now they sell chile mole y pozole, how we say here in Mexico, of everything, right? Yeah, which is really cool to
Small
Walmart. There you go.
Family, yeah, but it's beautiful. You should go there.
Yeah, it's
he remodeled and really nice.
Nice.
We grew up there being little tiny.
Yeah, technically where the store was their house. So, and the house was the store. So, and they're both very close to the center of town, which is a really good place to go visit as well. I remember growing up when people would go by the house, because it's big entrance, large wood doors. They would have them open, and people would think it was a museum, and they'd come in. Oh, could we come in and take pictures? Oh no, this is our house, which is cool to when you're little growing up. I think it's annoying now that you're older. Right? You're like, no.
Yeah, I know.
Right? So now they keep the door closed. But growing up, I think we would run around all the stores, and I think that's also like formative to how a lot of us grew up, because we started seeing how commerce works, seeing like everything, how to sell, right? I remember being little, and my grandma would send me to go help customers, and then sit in the front with her. So you learn a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then, so all of us have had I think we're 6 grandchildren that are from my mom and my uncle. And the 3 of us, we're just from my mom's side. It's my older brothers and me. I'm the youngest. And I think all of us have gained a little piece of understanding how to run a business. 2 of my oldest brother has his own business. My other one is a CEO of another business. So they all have, my cousin has a restaurant. My other cousin has his own, everybody has
and they got their start, by working in a little department store.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of a department store here in Mascota.
In a small town, which you wouldn't think it would be that busy, but it is. It's very, they're very lucky in having a lot of commerce in town, because a lot of, how we said, a lot of people from the outside towns come to Mascota to buy things because it is one of the bigger towns. So a lot of the camiones that bring things, that bring them to Mascota. Although Mascota is a little bit expensive in comparison to other towns, I think that's something to note. The way you usually think going rurally, things will be a little bit cheaper.
Right.
Because of our location.
Yeah, you're kind of out there.
Yeah, we're out there, and then we're up in the mountain too. So
people have to, they got to schlep stuff over here, right?
Right, and so there's a little bit of tax on that for sure.
You know, something funny that I remember is 50 years ago, a little more than 50 years, when we were growing up on that business, on my family's business. I was probably 5, 6 years old, and people from all around the towns, here will come in horses. They will tie their horses outside of the business, and they will get their azúcar, sal, harina, frijol, everything. And they will stock the horses, and then they will travel 3 hours in horses all the way to La Navidad, to all these. So that was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Really cool, because on those years, I will say on the 60s, for sure, all the way to 1975. That was the way.
Yeah.
That was the way that people will come to our business, and also to it was another 2 big stores, here. But they will sell on those days from flour, sugar, all the way to everything, to do their own clothes, because we know that from here it was not a nice way to go.
So they sold fabric, they sold all kinds of things.
Yeah. Or to go to Guadalajara. On those days, on the 60s, you will do 13 hours from here to Guadalajara. And I don't remember how many to Puerto Vallarta, which now is only 2.5, 3 hours. And to Puerto Vallarta is only an hour and a half, 2 hours. But on those days, so that's why they start this kind of business.
Yeah, they would. You got that business from all around the towns.
Yeah.
On their horses.
On their horses, yeah. Which is really, really interesting.
It was so many funny stories, because guys, will come to our business, which is Tienda Chavez, or to Los Robles, Nápoles. They will tie their horses. They will do their shoppings. Believe it or not, they will get to wherever who sold alcohol on those days. And it's stories about people who lives all the way, hours from here, who will stay with a horse full up with their own merchandise, and they will be so drunk.
The horse will take them home.
Take them home.
They will continue.
All right. Yeah.
So maybe that's where the idea for the hotel came from.
I think so too. How many rooms you got in this hotel?
Right now, functioning, we have 24.
You have 24 rooms.
Yeah.
And they're all pretty much the same style?
So right now I have 3 types of rooms. We're still working on our suites. Those are the other ones that are still being worked on. But we have double beds. So the regular 2 beds, they're queen size. And then I have queen size rooms and then kings.
So good. Yeah. So you got something for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Very, very good. Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It has an energy that I can't explain, but it is lovely. And I'll have pictures of it in the show notes. Everybody, you can find it at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. Look in the show notes for this episode, for our trip to Mascota and for the Hotel Encanto de la Sierra. There's raicilla all around here.
Oh, yeah.
When we were driving up here, this is the first time I've noticed, and I've been up here, on the way to San Sebastian many times, and now I see agave fields. So we're doing the raicilla. It looks like
now it's actually, we're part of the Ruta Raicillera, which is now there's the Ruta Tequilera that goes to tequila.
So you're the raicilla route.
Yeah, we're on the raicilla. So raicilla comes from a native agave plant. It's called Maximiliana. And we actually have a few up on the second floor. They're all the little green, the smaller green, wider leaf agave. Those guys, they're silvestres, right? They grow in los montes. They grow everywhere. But you'll be able to notice it, especially going through San Sebastián before you get to La Estancia. You could see on the right side there'll be all the blue agave, and then on the left side it's all the green. So it's a
very
raicilla.
impressive.
It's gonna they're starting to look into it internationally, and it's starting to become a very, very well-known drink. We call it like Mexican moonshine because it is one you got to watch out for.
Step lightly.
Yes, be cautious for sure. There's flavored ones too, so they're starting to make with yerba buena, mojito. So I think all the different raicilleras have their own twist on the drink.
Okay.
Usually the straight, just the alcohol is really good. It has a very high proof. I think it's around the straight one is like 40, 50, 60 proof, depending on where you get it, right? Some places you could ask for them to make it a little bit smoother because it does have that mezcal kind of burnt a little bit, not as like nice to you as tequila is, right?
Right.
But it is a really good drink. It's funny because we have family that have raicilla, and when we go to Volcanes, it's happened to me where you go and you think you're getting a garrafón with water and it's raicilla. Right?
Oh, so exactly. All right, so let's talk about these garrafones because that's what they do. They store them, and then you bring your own bottle usually, right? I mean, that's what. So when you bring your own bottle, what kind of a bottle should you bring?
I usually recommend the glass, the like
with a stopper on it, with like one of those little snap tops
we have
on
those. We have them here. A lot of distilleries they package their bottles now too, which is really cool. Here in Mascota, there actually is the raicilla, what's it called? The
commercial
raicilleros group. So they have a whole place where you could go and try all the raicilla that's actually marketable now.
Okay.
Because
from
I think
like a tasting, right? A little tasting room.
And the cool thing is raicilla is barely starting to become classified as a distilled liquor. So before they couldn't sell it because what are you selling? What kind of spirit is
what you got there?
Right? Yeah.
What's in that bottle? What's in that garrafón?
Exactly. So it's starting to become, I think we've actually had the catas here with the one of the first grading companies. They're starting to start grading it and seeing whose is the best. I believe one of the best tequileros that have won internationally are starting to get into raicilla now too. So it's starting to become a very commercial business. That's why you see a lot more raicilla being planted now than blue agave, because blue agave, well, we could see here in the hotel, we have one that's 6 years old and she's ginormous. And that takes a lot more space, and that Maximiliana is a lot smaller. They get a lot of the same yield from it, and it's a little bit of higher proof. So depending on how they make it, they could get potentially more out of it than blue agave, right?
Right. Well, look at you. You know all about that stuff.
Yeah,
well, it's in the family, right? It's in the family.
3 years ago, we hadn't even opened here the hotel, and they asked us about having here the feria, the raicilla, and it was great because the ones that compete, they brought their own mixologos.
Yes.
And it was delicious. And everybody was here with live music. We were dancing. It was so cool.
Send me some pictures from that event. That sounds like a great event.
Yeah.
Wow.
And something else that I want to just add is that probably next time, because unless you stay tomorrow, we can take you. I can make arrangements and you will love this place. Cristina hasn't known it yet, but right here, 10 minutes from here, we have a beautiful little town that is called Yerba Buena, Peppermint.
Oh, I've heard about it.
Okay?
I have.
Well, they have a museum. It's private, but this guy is a collector, and has this wonderful, wonderful place that you'll love. And we can take you there. They have a beautiful lagoon. It's let's say, I say that is Mascotas, Yerba Buena for us is Beverly Hills.
So that's why I get these people saying, "Oh, you got to go to Yerba Buena."
That's beautiful.
To Yerba Buena, Navidad, great food, very rustic, and Sierra Lago,
Yeah.
which you will.
We have a little bit of everything. Sierra Lago is a
Yeah.
5-star resort, all inclusive. It's very close, beautiful. They give you access to the lagoon. You could pack and take a picnic and eat there. Just because they won't sell food or drinks there, to non-guests. But the lagoon is beautiful. They do horseback rides around. They have little paddle boats, so you could go into the lagoon. It's a beautiful place. They have fruit trees all around.
Oh, wow.
The whole way is just beautiful pine trees. You start just getting into the mountain, and the view from up there towards the valley is just pristine. It's really nice. And then we also go up to Navidad and Yerba Buena. Yerba Buena is really cool because it's a small, tiny little town, probably 5 blocks. But they have their own little lagoon with the geese and ducks and fish.
Oh, wow.
And then they have their little kiosco as well. They have a church. And then they also have a foco tonal, which is like an energetic center where they found a shaman, I believe, around like 12 years ago, visited the place. And they started taking videos, and they could see these energy waves in the videos and distorted like magnetic frequencies. So they started going there, and it's a really cool place. It's on private property, but the owners are always there, and you could just walk in and they'll help you go through the process, or you could do it on your own, which is a really cool experience.
When you say the process, what do you mean? What's the process?
It's I don't even know how to explain it. It's something you have to live. So
Okay.
it's
like it's to get into it, right?
You go into a circular area, and there's 3 pillars. Each one is dedicated to an archangel, and you go, and there's you could see sometimes there's a red ray of light, so healing, depending on what you're going there for, which is really cool. And then right next door they have a little like Nawa, little like, I don't even know how to call it. It's like a little ritual room, which is really cool too.
Okay.
So he goes through the whole process with you, and it's a really cool experience as well, which not a lot of people know about.
No.
A lot of people do know about them because there's a lot of them in Mexico on different, they've done lines, and they've seen that they're on this.
Yeah, these ley lines.
Yeah, exactly. Which is really interesting. It's a really cool experience as well. Those are super recommendable places to go. And then the food in Yerba Buena is just, there's still the little lady that cooks in her house. And I think she's one of the first ladies to make gorditas in the area. So just wonderful food. The views up there are beautiful as well. And then you go, it's a quick drive from what is Yerba Buena to the 3 little towns that are before Navidad, which is up in the mountains, which end up being Santa Rosa, Cimarrón Chico, y Cimarrón Grande, which are literally driving back in time. You go, and you're like the rock hedges, the views. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. The cows that you're gonna run into when crossing the road, because it's their land.
Theirs, yeah.
And then it's everything. So there's huellas, which is there's cement tracks on the ground, but that's pretty much it. So it's all dirt and then cement tracks, and you take those guys, and then you'll get to a curb and you have to pull over because there's another car coming. And so it's a whole experience. It's something that I don't think you would get in a lot of places. It's the magic of rural Mexico, I think, as well, because it's not paved roads. It's all cobblestone. And once you're done with the cobblestone, you hit dirt, and people take tiny little cars up there. You see them.
And it's okay. And it's Does it make it?
They all make it.
Wow.
It's a really interesting way of looking at how people live, and how people are able to get places with so little and just doing so much. It's a beautiful experience. I think for me, moving out here was like very mind opening, because first of all, it made me really understand the value of a dollar. I think that I worked part-time jobs in California, and I probably made more than people here make in a week. So it's really interesting to see how you can actually like prolong the use of your money and actually feed like a community with it, because that's a really cool part of getting to know people, getting to know like what people value too, which is really interesting because values, I think growing up in certain places, you get detached from what reality is and you don't really see what other people live and how other people live. And so that's really, for me, it's been a huge, eye opener for sure. And now that I'm here, sometimes I go back to the States. I'm like, oh, I like being out there,
Yeah.
which is something that since I was little, I always said, oh, find
Just
somebody
the opposite.
to run your hotel. Right. And then life changes you and life perspective gives you a lot more. So for me, it was like a big reconnecting with my roots, really seeing where my families come from on both sides, because my dad's family, they're originally from Mascota, but they all came from Nayarit from that side. So that's where, my native ancestry comes from as well. So that's a really interesting seeing like how those native ancestors met other ancestors that came here from Europe and how that whole mixture and seeing like on those documents that my great grandfather was referred to as a mestizo or like, and things like that, which now you wouldn't know if you didn't have access to those things. Right. Which is really cool. And seeing that, there's a very big, I don't know it's a parque cinegético, which is like a, shooting, but they also do, it's a hunting ground.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest ones in Jalisco. And it's called Jalapilla. And I didn't know my great grandfather, that's their ranch. That's where they came from. So you can't get there still. There's no roads. So it's all you have to have, ATVs or a horse or mulita, right? Like everybody would ride because, it is up in the mountains. It's some of the most beautiful views, but I've never been there. I'm guessing my dad hasn't been there, right? Which is really interesting to know where you come from and still not know the way or how to get there, right? Which is cool. It's really, there's so much to do around town and so much to see and like talking to people and getting their point of view of how, their families have lived in Mascota, and then realizing that there's people with the same last name as you, but no family relation, or they just came from Navidad, right? Because our last name is from Navidad, but technically that's not our side of the family. Our family comes from a different side, from San Sebastian, from over there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my dad talks about growing up, and his dad would strap him onto the horse and go, and he'd be falling asleep on the horse, right? And they'd make their way to San Sebastian. And I remember being little, and one of the first times I think I went to San Sebastian before I was old, because I didn't go very frequently until now. Now I go quite a bit, but yeah, going, and it looks the exact same from when I was little. The same plaza. I remember the basketball courts next to the plaza, which is beautiful, because all of those things are things that I think should be continued and should be seen, because people would play basketball right next to La Plaza, and that's it. That was literally it. There was nothing else to do, and just playing with rocks and sticks. You grow up here and you learn how to like take advantage of what nature provides. And I think that's one of the cool parts of having a childhood out here. You see a lot of the kids still very connected with their surroundings, with their ranchos, where they're from, with their pets, with their animals, which is really cool. And I think that's the beauty of places like this, that you still get that connection to the past and seeing where people come from and those relationships that we could create and that we could still take advantage of and just be able to grow as like humans, I think, because I think we go a lot of the time for city life and the fastness of everything. And here you're kind of forced to slow down, which for me was a big learning experience for sure. But you fit into it. And then it's kind of like, wow, you look at other things and now you're like, wow, I didn't expect to like slowing down so much, or to like paying attention to other people's lives as much, which is interesting because sometimes we have those blinders on and tunnel vision, right? Yeah. So I think it's been a beautiful experience. It's been a beautiful experience here at the hotel, just seeing how a business like this also impacts the community and how you can give and how you can help grow the tourism here, because touristically wise, we would love more people internationally coming. We do get a lot of international guests, but those are people that are the adventurers that are willing to drive out here and get lost and try to figure it out, right? And then I don't think you'd need to speak Spanish to be able to come out here.
No.
I think that there's enough people that are be able to help you out. And if not, Mexican culture is very much about helping anybody. So, I think that's a little bit something I'd like to emphasize, because a lot of people hear Mexico and they're like, oh, scary, danger, Jalisco, right? And it's nothing. I think it's the contrary. As long as you're not doing anything that has anything to do with somebody else, why would you bother somebody? Well, don't bother somebody and you're not going to get bothered.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much, I think, the way of the land, right?
Right.
Learning how to appreciate other people, learning how to appreciate other people's differences, the way people look. People aren't as used to so much diversity too, so things are really interesting to them sometimes, and people do stare and people do come up and ask, and that's the cool part, because you're sharing a part of the world that potentially people here wouldn't get access to as well, right?
Exactly.
So that's really cool, and they love it. People out here really do love the tourism and seeing new things, and that's a lot for them to do. It's a 2-hour drive. A lot of people there's a lot of cars in Mascota, but I can guarantee 4 or 5 of those cars are owned by one person, right? So they're big families. You will see the occasional young kid driving too, which are a lot of interesting things that you see, right? Which is part of like understanding other people's culture and exposure and being able to have those conversations.
All right. So what was the youngest kid you seen driving a car?
Probably like 7.
Okay.
7 years old. And his mom was in the passenger seat. Yeah, it was those moments where you're like, oh, wow. Okay.
Is he going to stop? Sure, he'll stop.
But you know what? It's funny because it's a huge part of, I mean, I understand it in El Rancho, you're driving, they have to learn how to do those things. And that's part of but yeah, once you're in town, it's a little bit interesting seeing that sometimes, or seeing people ride around with no helmets, but that's all part of the beauty of a rural place, where you do see a lot of things that you're like, oh, in a city, that couldn't happen.
You would never see that.
You would never see it. Yeah, exactly.
Or they'd be pulling you over.
Oh yeah. And they do now. They do. So it's starting to get more,
What about trucks with all the people in them and stuff like that?
Yeah. The other day, it was funny. The other day we were driving, and there were 3 of them passed, because they're the chileros, right? So they go and they pick all the chile, and then they go home. They all get dropped off at home. And we saw one and they were perfectly fine. And then the next one, everybody was like passing around a bottle. So we were like, oh, look at them. They're having a good time. And then the next day, one of them crashed into another car.
Ooh.
So we're like, okay, there you go. There's no more bottle.
Right? Lesson learned on that one.
But it's funny because it's not funny for the person that got their car crashed into. But it's funny because you do see a little bit of that part of the culture as well, where there is it's a big part of the end of the day to go get a chela, or to go, you see everybody and from 2 to 4 at the Deposito or at the Modelo Rama or at Oxxo, right? And it's either Coca-Cola or a beer.
Or a Kawama.
Yeah, exactly,
there
right?
You go.
So that's a huge part of culture. And it's interesting to see it because according to the culture, it's the best way to hydrate. So
of course it is. Of course
so,
it
is. You see a lot of funny occurrences, things that you wouldn't see in other places, but also you learn to appreciate the differences, right? The nuances of the way of seeing life, and also the way that culture stayed so similar in such a long time, right? And how families are still here, and how now, I think my generation, I think those were the ones that started moving out a lot more.
Yeah.
There's still, I think for my parents' generation, a lot of them, they did the move to the States, right? So Navidad and Yerba Buena are communities that are los norteños pretty much. So everybody moved to a lot of the families moved to the States, and then they send money to make their house here. And now they have these giant houses that are only occupied 3-4 months out of the year.
Right.
Which are beautiful for the landscape, but it's also interesting to see where that economic impact comes from, and where people who are from here but who aren't here still want their little seed here in town, because it is part of the roots.
Yeah, and it seems like, and I've met a lot of people in Vallarta, a lot of Vallartenses who are from Mascota. Their families come from Mascota and they're down there. And I imagine that they all have homes up here too, right? So they probably, that's going on,
both ways. It goes to Guadalajara
right?
and goes to Vallarta. Well, a lot of the information that I've gotten from Vallarta is a lot of where the hotels were. That hotel zone in the beginning of Vallarta was all owned by somebody from Mascota. So,
okay.
My dad says that the first time that they would go to Vallarta, he said there was nothing. It was still like El Tuito and, what's the other one? Maito. Yeah, Maito, where it's still virgin land and people are barely starting to populate. So he said that that's how it was. And that's 60 years ago.
Right.
So, I mean, we're not that far. The way that these populations have been impacted by tourism is great. I mean, Vallarta is one of the biggest touristic destinations in Jalisco, and it's becoming one of the biggest in Mexico again.
Right,
so,
in the world.
Yeah, and so it has everything for everybody. I think that's the coolest part. It's a very small place, but if you go to the right, you go up to Punta Mita, all that way, it's a different type of tourism that you get. You get more surfing. It's open water, right? And then you go left and you get to all the small, tiny little beautiful beaches, Yelapa, Las Animas, Madagascar, all of those, Colomitos, which is the smallest, it's the smallest beach in Mexico. It's beautiful, pristine waters. And you could take a little boat right there, and all of those things are just quick and easy places. Even for us, I love to do it all the time. I do a hike from Boca all the way to Las Animas, and that's great. But sometimes the heat out there is too much. You gotta head up the mountains, right?
Nice and crisp and cool mornings here.
Exactly. Yeah. So right now we're starting to get it gets a little bit colder, and that's the best part. I think San Sebastian, you get the foggy weather and you're in the mountains, and then Mascota, it's like a microclimate. So you get a lot of different weather around the year. We do get our good amount of rain, and then we also do have some good heat, and then it changes depending. The other day it was bright and sunny out and it just started raining out of nowhere. I mean, there's climate change for you.
Yeah.
And but we also do have a lot of trees and just a lot of beautiful nature to see, and that's just a little ride up the mountain, and then past Mascota you start getting into the Talpa side, and over there and they have maple forests and just a whole bunch. They have cafetales. They're starting to grow coffee out there. So the whole zone is just the whole área. It's mágica. Aguacates and all of that, right? Which all have their their economic impact, and then they also have a environmental one as well, right? So we see a lot of changes. A lot of people talk about how this year we didn't get enough rain, and that has to do with the illegal tala de los árboles that's happening, right? Because that is a big. I don't know if you guys have seen the big rigs with old growth.
I've not been watching. I haven't seen it. No.
And those are little issues that we see here and there. That's unfortunate. But at the same time, really, there's not much one can do about it, unfortunately. And yeah, just seeing how that has changed the way we get water in town as well, because we are very lucky in the sense of having an abundance of water.
Yeah.
There are we have, I mean, look at the garden, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, right? It's green all around.
And it's all in everywhere. But that's after rainy season.
After rainy season, sure.
Because of all of these big, farming powers that are starting to grow a lot of different crops around the town. That is an impact on water. So we haven't ran out of water, but that is something that is expected in a certain amount of time. But I think that's everywhere, unfortunately. Right. So it's starting to take care of Mother Earth and pay attention to her needs, right? Because if we don't, well, we're screwed too.
We're screwed. We're out of luck.
Right. So
how do you advertise this? You got a Facebook page?
Yeah, we have Facebook, Instagram, we're on Google, we're on Booking. So just depending on where anybody wants to do, even WhatsApp, you send us a text, and all of that is through our Google page as well. So we're very easily accessible. We do love international business. I think we're one of the hotels that gets most of it just because of our English capacity. and we're one of the bigger ones as well. But there are great options. There's options for anybody, any budget, any interest as well. There's a lot of tour providers in town. It is just making sure that you take the time to contact where you're staying and ask them to be able to make those connections, because that'll be a way easier sense. We
Excellent.
are still getting,
great idea.
Yeah, we're still getting those tour providers being able to connect with international business, because it's a little bit harder for them.
Well, maybe we can get some of those and we'll put them in the show notes as well, so that we can have those for our listeners, so they can be able to access the tour providers, so that when they do arrive, they can go and do all these fun things.
And there's tour providers that have their own vehicles, and they'll take you all the way to Navidad. They have open buses and everything. So, and even Mascota, the municipio has a little.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that too. All right. Well, I'll have those all in the show notes. Of course, I'll have all the links for the Facebook page and Instagram, and of course, for your website. They'll be in the show notes as well. So make sure you look for them there, and I will put some of those tour providers so that you guys can check it out. And when you do land here, you can go and check out the areas all around Mascota. Christina, is there anything I forgot? Anything that we need to talk about?
I think other than the beauty that is around town, and just the beauty of food. Oh yeah, food. Yeah, all the great food in town, and then you get all of these rural foods that you wouldn't get anywhere else, that are typical to the zone.
Oh well, you know what? I had a hamburger yesterday that was not a typical hamburger. Okay, it had Oaxaca cheese in it. It had bits of pineapple in it. It was not a normal hamburger, but you're just like you're saying, this is just
it's that mixed
experience of the area, right?
Yeah, of course. And then all the traditional foods as well that are just exquisite, that I think, when you're from somewhere, you have that nobody makes it better than my mom, right?
Sure.
But there's a lot of places that have that sazon, that taste that you wouldn't find, and it's because of the ingredients that they use around town, and it's all from town, and it has even the tortillas. They smell like a certain type of ceniza.
They're from Mascota.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's those smells that are, for me, nostalgic. That I still smell. It still smells the same going around the corner to the tortilleria next to Pepe's, and walking in and them giving you a nice warm little tortilla with a little bit of salt and rolling it up and giving to you as a kid. You still get that experience. And I think that's just the beauty of all the cheeses that we have in town and around, that all have different tastes, and depending on how they make it. So I think it's a beautiful place with a lot to offer, just a little bit more getting an outside knowledge of it, right? Everybody coming and starting to experience it, I think is what's needed now.
I agree. Wow. Well, all right. I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for allowing me to sit down and talk with you and introduce Mascota and your lovely hotel, Encanto de la Sierra. And I want to make sure that everybody look in the show notes, check out the pictures of this place. It's incredible. I'll have picture of Christina's smiling face, so make sure you look at those in the show notes. Of course, that's on the album art too, so you'll be able to see that too. Christina, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys having a wonderful time here with us and coming to visit us. It's awesome. It's really great.
Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de amor junto al mar. Solo camino eterno por la playa, me encuentro junto al río cuando todo está en calma. Pronto cae la noche, me brillas Puerto Vallarta. de Puerto Vallarta.